Hello and welcome to The Unraveling. This is a show about where we try to explore other things that appear to be true but are difficult to understand, and we take it one topic at a time. And today's topic is going to be wide-ranging, so I won't constrain it to a single topic, but I would say that Qigong is something that runs through it, or really the study of energy beyond more mundane energy in general. And we're going to be talking with Jeff Hardee. And Jeff Hardee is a consciousness practitioner and researcher. And the reason I was very excited to talk about Jeff is that he is not just reading what others have done or historical accounts, but is doing active research firsthand and trying to wade into the murky unknown of what appears to be a new frontier on his own and gain firsthand knowledge, which is the only way that any of us ever actually know anything. All knowledge originates from firsthand knowing. So I'm grateful for Jeff, and I'm really hoping to learn a little bit more about what he's doing, what he cares about, and what he hopes to do soon. So without any further ado, hello, Jeff.
Hello. Thanks, Stephen, for having me on.
Awesome. No problem. So I think probably the easiest place to start is your basic research, what you're most motivated by now, and what you would say your current project is, because I want to focus on what you're most excited about, because pretty much anything you're doing is going to be interesting.
Sure. The basic thing that I'm working on right now is a participant observation study of three Nagong Western groups. I'm making that distinction because I'm looking at the groups that have crossed the cultural divide, where the instructors have learned from Eastern masters, have developed certain abilities within themselves, and are now teaching other Westerners. They have schools in Western countries. They're opening medical clinics and other practices as they're, allowing this knowledge to pass on to the West. So my background includes a religious studies degree where I focused on new religious movements and mysticism. And then I'm in a doctoral program where I'm focusing on consciousness and ET studies. And I'm moving all those parts together into looking at how humans are advancing themselves, how they're evolving, and trying to actually bridge or merge the two disciplines of religion and science in a way, and looking at, what are the claims that have been made throughout history and specifically these groups, and then trying to replicate it within myself, but then also using instrumentation to try to measure it.
I, I see sort of two parallel paths here where it sounds like you are trying to go on site, meeting people, to the professed masters. Of course, that's what the purpose of measurement is, and observation is. Are you really? What can you do? And then, but you're also doing this firsthand. So how do you sort of marry those two? Like, which is a priority for you, or are they really just different timelines?
Yeah, so it's a research choice. You when you're studying a topic, you can choose to do a survey. You can choose to just look at historical literature or accounts, or you can do what I'm doing, which is called phenomenology. It's an approach in anthropology where you actually go into the lived experience. You try to embody the things that you're studying, and then you use that reflection at the same time as you're doing the standard academic study of that group. So think of it almost like embedded journalism in a way, where you're going to whatever group you want to study or phenomenon you want to study, and then reporting on it and fact checking it and those kind of things that you need to do as a good researcher, but then also trying to get the experience yourself in order to see what is it like, because you can interview people as much as you want in terms of beginners all the way down to masters, and you get a good survey of what that experience is. But to really approach it as a beginner and have a beginner's mind, right? In a way, look at a Zen aspect of this, and then try to replicate within yourself what they're claiming, and then giving your own journalistic idea of did that work or did that not work, or how did I pull in other elements from other traditions in order to have this experience? I think that enriches that research. So it does place me in a certain category of researchers. I lose some objectivity on purpose, but I also don't go too far into subjectivity. So I really try to ride that line, and I try to put both hats on equally. It's so I mentioned it in another interview where I'm trying to sort of reinvigorate the idea of an old term called scientific Illuminism, which was popularized by Aleister Crowley in the Equinox series back in the early 1900s. The original idea of that is attractive to me in that it's trying to use the banner of that encyclopedia set was the method of science, the aim of religion. So the idea of that was to look at what's the goal of religion, what's this idea of enlightenment, this idea of evolving as a human being, but then looking at that across cultures, across time, scientifically, and let's see what we can do to find the replicable methods that other humans can do to reach that, or to determine whether or not something is, in a way, crudely pure fluff, right? And something that you can, choose to do as a belief if you want, but it's not going to be something that somebody else can verify. So I'm trying to reinvigorate that term and use it more in its original sense.
The term is scientific illusion. Would you return?
Illuminism.
Illuminism. Okay, I like it. It definitely it jibes with me in the sense that I think I said in an intro here that my interest in taking these esoteric arts, understanding them through methods of science in part. That's a major piece of it. Firsthand experiential knowledge counts for something, but and then taking it from science to engineering, ideally without losing, some of the nice aspects of myth or religion, or there is value in the experience for sure. I don't disparage anybody who wants to follow these things for those reasons. That's great, but I really like your approach because it has an accountability and objectivity to it that is going to appeal to I think we can fairly say, a broad swath of humanity who is very swept up in materialism and determinism and simply cannot understand anything outside of their worldview. Not that these things aren't even incompatible, but I suspect there's something more fundamental, and your research here is really the tip of an iceberg. And I don't know which of these are going to shatter the paradigm first, but this is exciting for me. So let's make this like a little more concrete for anyone who's listening. Have you gotten to a point of forming any hypotheses, or are you still just sort of steeping in the culture of these groups, doing the practices, and trying to come up with an experiment? What stage would you say you're at in research, and what would you hope to demonstrate in a perfect world?
Yeah. So those are great questions. The I should mention that I have been interested in these subjects for a long time. So you can go all the way back to youth and weave the yarn of when I was born, I thought of this, right? But I guess really my interest kicked off in high school. Like a lot of people, I chanced upon in our library, great libraries that high schools have at the time in the 80s, of the encyclopedia set called Man, Myth, and Magic. It was a mind opener because it had a cornucopia of academics and enthusiasts who were writing articles about all sorts of supernatural, paranormal, or whatever subjects, even religious studies and anthropology and whatnot. And I came across parapsychology and Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn and groups like that, and that fired my imagination. So I've been sort of invested in the background literature and whatnot of many of these topics, which are all coming together. And just like any other thing in popular culture, there's fads that go in and out of favor, and things have really come back into favor recently. Especially when we look at the UAP topic after the New York Times article in 2017. But tied in with the UAP topic are quite a lot of paranormal events and activities and theories and
It's
whatnot.
the gateway drug.
It's all coming back into vogue. And now, of course, with Jake Barber and his team, doing the whole psionics, re reviving, that term, going way back to, Dungeons and Dragons days when they had psionics as part of the game. It's fascinating to watch. So uh, I see a lot of these topics are multidisciplinary. So I'm steeped into the literature and quite a lot of things, and I've as part of my religious studies degree at Arizona State University, I made it a point to go to as many different practices as I could to try to see, here's a new religious movement or here's a mystical group. They say that they do this. Okay, I'll do it. I'll check them out. I'll be open minded, not judgmental, and so let's just see, And I think that's really helped inform my experience. So that's all prep work for my eventual, connection with a formal Neigong group. The first group that I'm studying is Authentic Neigong. And that teacher, he's a TCM doctor, his name's Rudy, and he went to China, got his TCM degree, and also worked with various energy masters to try to understand this phenomenon called Fa Qi, which is human bioelectric external emission, energy emission. Now, the process of what he eventually has come to teach, he's pulled information from multiple teachers who are able to do these fantastic things that you may have seen in the Blair brothers, you know, um, the Indonesian Odyssey that they published in the 80s with John Chang,
Hmm.
who was a healer also and was able to, when he would touch patients, it would feel like electricity, or he put his hand over a piece of newspaper and it caught on fire. These masters that Rudy learned under can do similar things. And so I began practicing his system, which is a compilation of many of the things he's learned from various masters, bits and pieces over the years. And then there's a main instructor who is a Taoist priest. His name is Master Zhou Gansheng, and he also teaches as one of the main masters in an Italian group called Nei Chi Gong Fu.
Hmm.
So I also went and started looking at them. That Master Costantino Valente, he also has learned under another master previously to Master Joe, and he's created his own very structured system. So I thought, oh, this would be a good way in which to compare with those. And at the same time, there's a long-standing group, international group called Lotus Negong, which is taught by primarily Damo Mitchell and his wife, and quite a lot of followers that go through his system. He's very broad in what he teaches, and he started a foundations group just recently where he's going through the basic foundations of Neigong. So I signed up on that. So I just landed in the good opportunity of being able to be part of these three groups. I can't do any more. Three is plenty, but the fact is they're all related to with Neigong, two of the groups under a main master. But Demo Mitchell has also met with many other Eastern masters as well. But the thread here is Neigong. So the question is, what's Neigong, right? Neigong is something that has been around actually for centuries. And you can argue, when did the actual practice start? And we can go back to, early texts like The Secret of the Golden Flower or the Neijing Tu diagram, or go all the way back to the Tao Te Ching. But the fact is that there are individuals in the East that for many centuries have practiced a physical practice that is related to Taoism, by which they are able to collect energy, quote unquote, in their body, convert that energy, make it more refined, and through that are able to accomplish multiple things as part of their spiritual journey. So it's often a martial, a medical, and a spiritual journey for them. Um, as they go through these practices, there are many benefits from it. One of those consequences of doing the practice at the, let's say, intermediate and to above levels is this ability to do Fa Qi, which is to emit this energy out of the hands through the Laogong point, or out of the fingers through the meridians that terminate or enter based on your fingers. So if you look at the whole Chinese traditional Chinese medicine diagrams for acupuncture points, they're following the meridians. So as part of this research, because I had been a martial artist for a while, I'd studied multiple styles of martial arts. You often hear about these energy things and fantastic things that martial artists can do, and jump really high, or um, change their weight just through meditation, or set fires, or to be able to really hit somebody with a palm and they fly back several feet because you put your energy into it, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, well, I mean, one way to learn about what these things are is to do it. So for the last several years, I've been doing the practices that these three groups have been laying out for their students. And they're slightly different, but they're all under the same theme of getting your health right, forming what's called the cauldron, the in your lower dantian area, collecting energy into your lower dantian area, refining that energy, and then allowing that to move around in your body, to be able to direct it at will, and then be able to do other things with it. So because it's very physical, it gives me the opportunity to use my science background, because I had a very eclectic college career. I ended up with religious studies, but I had many majors. Um, it allows me to go and look at this and measure it, especially since October of 2023, when I went to Sweden and I actually met Master Joe and felt the Fa Chi for the first time on myself. And I've seen videos, but yes, who knows about the videos until you actually feel it. So I've now felt it multiple
Firsthand
times, and
knowing
that,
matters.
yeah, that's mind blowing, and it's given me lots of ideas on how to measure this. I've attempted to do measurements on myself, and then it's a slow process to try to convince various practitioners to allow you to measure them.
Mm.
They're very prickly about that for many reasons. And I've purchased, kind of like mobile lab equipment. So when I go on these trips, I can go on these trips. I'm able to pull it out if needed, when I'm permitted to, and then gather as much as I can. So I am publishing a paper. It's a proposal. I'm pretty confident it's going to be accepted for the Society for Scientific Exploration for this year's conference. So I've made a proposal to them already on methods to measure chi, external chi emission, both the collection of chi within your body and external emission. And that paper is right now including instruments that could measure as a hypothesis, but then I've also started to develop a theory of how this has been. How could it be possible that this uh, bioelectric energy is collected in the body and emitted? Because it absolutely feels like electricity. It feels a little bit like magnetism as well. And it's, I know it must be measurable. I mean, if you can feel it, if you close your eyes and
Affecting
have no
matter.
belief, yeah, and you can absolutely feel it, you should be able to measure it.
Yeah.
What's frustrating is that the things that I've attempted, everything's all zeros. It's frustrating, but it's awesome because that tells me, okay, my first thought was it's got to be this, or it's got to be emitted in this way, and that's not panning out. Okay, so that allows me to move on to the next thing that I can try until eventually I'm going to narrow it down. I mean, it's an inevitable thing. It's just a matter of time and patience, and unfortunately, the costs of getting this equipment and trying to do the cultural convincing that this is important for people who are able to do it to be measured. So that's a long story, but yes, I am halfway there. I think I'm
Oh,
starting to
wow.
form hypotheses. I'm starting to make some measurements. They're not panning out right now, but it still is good data. Data of zero is still good data. So I'm proceeding forward.
Yeah, if you can't measure an electric field off of it easily, like now it's getting more interesting, in my opinion, and I suspected this would be the case in any case, because bioelectrics alone doesn't make a lot of sense. Maybe that's an end result, but I think that there is something bizarre and fundamentally interesting happening that is going to teach us a lot. So the beautiful part about the null hypothesis is okay, you prove one instance, great, yeah, you did it. And then the rest is basically a PR game. But it sounds like you're in it for more than simply the scientific advance, which whether anyone pays attention or not is true, assuming you buy the experimental methods and all that, and the analysis. People have been doing this with parapsychology for a long time. The jury's basically out on a number of side effects. Like this is by any means of measuring anything. There's something here. It may not be what we say it is. So that alone, I think, is less exciting and probably doomed to the same problems.
Yeah.
What is?
Can I interrupt you just for a
Yeah,
second?
please.
Just on that comment, the jury is out. I hear that a lot, and I think that is a good comment, but we need to ask ourselves, what is the jury? Because many of these great scientists who have done experiments that can be repeated and have shown all of their data have actually presented their papers to juries, to good journals, and those journals have refused to even look at their data. So to me, that's not an honest jury, right? That's not an honest court. If there's a jury, it needs to be something that is truly following the scientific method and has its mind open. And then when all those things get published properly, as they should be, that's why more people are doing pre-publication services rather than going to main magazines like Scientific American. Then we'll get more of the exposure that we need. So just ask, who's the jury?
Sure. I wouldn't disparage you taking up that mantle and attempting to change the broader minds of scientific America and beyond, but I think it seems like you are also heavily motivated by actual understanding, regardless of whether other people pay attention or not. Hopefully they do, but it sounds to me like you're not so interested in improving the effect, although that's part of it. It sounds like you truly want fundamental understanding on your own, or whomever you can attract real scientific review and betterment from. Is that about right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, to me, it's about, for lack of a better term, human evolution, or recognizing these abilities that have been written about in religious literature, for ever since human beings have had religion. That it is something that's been a part of our humanness, but not necessarily been in certain cultures promoted, and taught to children and things like that. It's something that deserves exploration. And and the question, because I get this from the Nagong practitioners that I speak to as well, where they say to me, why do you want to measure this? We don't need to prove that this is real. We know it's real. We experiencing it on a regular basis. Why are you trying to prove it's real? And my answer is, I'm not. I'm simply trying to measure a phenomenon that exists. But measurement is not the end goal, like you've alluded to. Measurement is the first step. Then the questions that naturally come up, right, in the scientific method is, okay, I have data, I have a phenomenon. Now, what are the consequences of that? What are the philosophical implications of that? What kind of social policy can we write based on that? And one of the things I guess I'm getting passionate about is looking at our Western medical, industry, and seeing, our over reliance on pharmaceuticals and the kind of approaches that are used in allopathic medicine is in many ways worked on the whole for a certain population if you've had a really good test base. But the more we dig into those tests, it's for actually a really smaller population than we think, and doesn't cover the majority of individuals. But when you look at more Eastern approaches to medicine, like the traditional Chinese medicine, or Chinese medicine before the government stamp on it, that's much more individualized, and more importantly, it recognizes the fact that there is an energetic system to the human body, that there is a meridian system. There are things like five element theory, which even if we may not think of, fire, metal and wood and stuff like that as concrete things that we can find molecular formulas for, conceptually how they work together, we can create a model which
It's just
allows for, yeah, better medical outcomes. And I'm seeing in these treatments that are done with this chi, this external chi, the vast majority of the people who have this ability are doctors. And when they're using this external chi as an adjunct to their regular medical practice, whether it be acupuncture or moxibustion or even just standard herbs, that it enhances the healing of the patient significantly. Now, why would the Western world not be jumping all over this? The reason why, I think, is because we don't have the measurement. We don't have the theoretical model. So I'm passionate about trying to contribute to that in some way so that our Western system can actually start getting a clue and starting to incorporate the energetic part of our being as well as the material part of our being for overall medical health of the entire population. That we can heal ourselves in some ways, but also that if we can get people who are able to do this ability, um, I I actually don't think that it's something that we're just going to find a machine that can do it for us, because I have looked at machines like electroacupuncture machines and try to compare that on myself with somebody who's actually doing Fa Chi. It's not the same. It's a cousin, but it's not the same. And we need to be utilizing this to overall improve our health. Now, there's other things that it does as an individual. If you start cultivating, there's things that happen for you as an individual which are positive. That's something else. But just in general, for the Western medical system, that's one of my end goals, is to try to get that introduced.
I think it's beautiful. I've often felt that if when we finally wise up, fortunately, there's an enormous amount of backlogged research already done on this. In fact, they don't just ignore these effects, or they actively control against them in what's called the placebo effect. And that you can find, if you just invert all the research, you will find that we have an enormous amount of medical research done in the placebo effect that I think will be very compelling and directionally useful for trying to introduce this. And I've found that that's often a great hand wave way to get this people to talk about it, which is, who cares how it works? It works. They're actually getting better. The person who is
Yeah,
now healing is healing more, and that's what you care about, right? So that's sort of the back door, and then eventually, as you've mentioned at the beginning, first-hand experience is what really solidifies something. It gives you a level of knowing, of gnosis, that you can't get just from hearing about it. And so I think that you're going to find success there, especially if you remain focused on real world effects. It's actually helping and working and doing something that you can't ignore that. And that's the real reason you measure something, is you can't ignore it.
yeah. Now the other thing, and this is more woo, you could consider, is the entire UAP phenomenon, the whole idea of disclosure, based on all of the accounts that we have collected so far and the things that I'm learning about in my doctoral program, and even just restricting ourselves to early 1930s and forward, right? The first recovered craft in Italy was reported in the early 1930s. Um, let's just look at all those accounts. In many of those accounts, um, the compelling evidence and all the whistleblowers that are coming out is that there are beings that are visiting this planet, or I use the term squatting as well. They've moved in without permission, and they are interacting with us. That is slowly it's slowly coming out now. I mean, we've got so many people um, that are well-known government insiders, or intelligence officials that are just flat out saying it now. Like there was a recent interview on Joe Rogan with Hal Puthoff, where he basically agreed with Bob Lazar that Bob Lazar had said that he saw 9 craft at S4, right? Well, Hal Puthoff just recently said a few days ago that the U.S. has in its possession 10 craft, right? But the craft weren't all downed. They were craft that would include those that were downed and the craft that were donated, as in the craft was landed somewhere, the occupants, the drivers of them walked away and basically said, here you go, figure it out. Now, that scenario, whether or not you think that that's actually happening, let's just think about that scenario. What would what do we need to do as a species to think about that if and when that does happen? Another intelligent, conscious being comes and visited us. We need to then take a really good, hard look at ourselves, our history, our capabilities, and and in a way, I would caution, even my fellow students, not completely give up our entire agency to another, race that just happens to visit simply because they have a better car than we do. That doesn't mean we have to give up all of our conceptions, about everything. We still have some agency, and we don't have to, treat ourselves automatically as inferior. That there are things, amazing things that human beings have been able to do, that we can still explore and use those things to interact with those beings. And this idea of energy and us being aware of our energy body and being able to enhance ourselves with our own training that's part of our history for many centuries, I think is going to be a key in having an interaction that is much more on an equal playing field. It's one based on equality and respect.
And
Because there's many
competence.
stories about the ETs and their energy interactions with us. So
There's a wealth of things to discuss about that, but I
yeah,
love this pro-human side, this trend line through all of your research because I also hold it dear. There are other options besides fight or worship, which seems obvious to me, and that if you are not capable, if you don't even understand how the game around you is being played, how could you possibly? You're just dependent on the benevolence of all the other actors, which seems unreasonable considering natural laws probably extend far beyond what we realized was the barrier, and that there could be forces at play that if you don't understand could be used against you, even unintentionally. Look at just the history of human colonization. Even
exactly.
when well intentioned, culture permeates, even if you don't intend to. Just showing up with advanced technology or capabilities is enough to already greatly distort us if we're not mindful of who we want to be and where our, it's just like any relationship. Where are our boundaries? Who do we want to be? How far is too far?
Yeah, exactly. And how much do we want to give up for that shiny new car that our new neighbor has, right? A lot of it is just really looks, right, and marketing. When you look under the hood, as you had sent me a question before this podcast, what if we consider the question of that the ETs are not as smart as we think they are, right? What about that scenario? What if, uh, given the behavior based on multiple insiders, right, in the program that have said that many of these craft have been donated to us, as in just left, right, keys running or whatnot. What if that's the same way of first contact that they received on their planets, as in somebody had this better car, this gravity drive vehicle, and just dropped it off and then allowed the chips to fall where they may. And if the species who received that technology was then able to utilize it, to then explore other worlds and then move on with whatever they were thinking as their agendas at the time, then that's just how it leapfrogs through. That's very different from a culture that has moved from the wheel and did innovation after innovation and cultural change after cultural change until they got to the gravity drive. That's very different. And a lot of the assumptions I get from the vast majority of the people I talk to on the subject, they think that the cultures who are visiting us have gone through that whole process. It's probably not. Probably not.
I think so.
Yeah, they were
So
just given it. They have this great fancy car that works really well. And based on their own current agendas, right, good or bad, they now can utilize that uh, to uh, to either our benefit or not. And we need to question that. You know, great, you got a great fancy car, you're a new neighbor, awesome. What's your agenda? What's your purpose? You know, what is it you actually believe? You know, what is your science? Show me your art. I even want to see the ET's porn. I want to know who they are as a species, right? I want to understand where it is they're coming from, what they value, and to know whether or not we are going to be good neighbors, right? Because they're somebody just moves into the neighborhood, awesome. They still need to abide by the principles of being a good neighbor as much as we do, right? It's a two-way street.
There's, as you know, Valet and many other researchers have pointed out, there's too many strange things going on to jump to any one conclusion right away. I'm totally with you. I could even go as far as to say that there is evidence, not, you can make an argument, not that it's the only one, that we may be the anomaly, and that if some level of intentionality or idealism turns out to be true, and consciousness is at least fundamental, if not dualistic, and you can somewhat manipulate reality with your mind, it would make sense for a lot of intelligent life to get good at that first, and that they don't have a lot of automation in any of these stories. In fact, everything appears to be operated either by itself, like it's alive, everything is its own creature, or it's just sort of wished into existence. If you could alter the rules of physics with your mind, you don't learn the rules of physics. You don't learn calculus. You don't learn engineering. You don't need to. You just go over there.
Exactly.
I'm over there now. In fact, you
Yep.
don't learn the extra steps it takes to build a robot because you don't know how to build a robot. You could build a living thing that acts kind of robotic and does what it's told, but you don't actually know how it works in the same way. That doesn't mean you're not very capable. You would be like this sort of tyrant, childlike god that can have whatever they want, but you don't actually understand how it works mechanistically. And
Well, yeah. Oh, and the
that's more evidence
appreciation that
of
you
that.
would need to have as an operator of that, if you just got it rather than if you helped invent it.
Yeah, you build a better model of how it works at lower and lower levels that you can do real engineering and automation on. I am skeptical also that they've gone through those steps. And I think that a lot of it is just even in the advice of, many abductee scenarios, just do this. Just be loving, or just get rid of your nukes, or just it's very simple. It's almost outcome driven. Just wish for the outcome. What are you talking about? Not here's the steps, here's the changes to make, here's the things you should invent. None of those. It's all skipped over as if why don't you just wish for what you want? Well, that's what you would do if that's what you're used to doing. How I see it, anyway.
Yeah, yeah. And I have to promote an analogy I came up with yesterday.
Oh yeah.
So I'm in a class. We have these short form graduate classes at Ubiquity University in the ET Studies program, and we get quite a number of different people within the subject matter, and they teach a couple hours for maybe 4 weeks or so. These short classes, and some classes are a little bit longer. And so I had the chance to take classes under quite a number of interesting people. And the class that just started is with Barbara Lamb, and she's a well-known regression hypnotherapist and has regressed thousands and thousands of people. And I'm also a hypnotherapist. I've recently started a practice. But I asked the question, and there's a lot of controversy about, the ET subject and hypnotherapy, and, whether or not the therapist is leading the, the patient and whatnot. And I think that's valid criticism. Uh, and that's why I asked the question, after Barbara gave her lecture for the day. Did she feel that the therapist is responsible for verifying the claims of the patient, on whether or not they were actually abducted, or whether or not they have past lives of being an alien, or things like that? Or is her role really just to allow come up with techniques to allow the patient to somehow integrate these experiences, whether they're fantasy or fact, so that they move on and have a productive life? Her answer um, was interesting and honestly troubling to me. Not just her answer, but then all the comments of my fellow students who were in the class on how they were reacting to the answer. And her answer to me, and Barbara's a great person. I'm sure she's had a career that's helped a lot of people. But her answer to me, at least in that stage, and I want to dig into it further, was an example of somebody who falls into a standard logical fallacy. Her answer was that when she inquires with her patients, the thing that strikes her the most is the amount of detail that's in their stories. And that in and of itself, not by itself, but that primarily is what convinces her that these are real experiences. Now, I heartily object to that approach, and that is not something I practice in my hypnotherapy. I do think it's important for a patient to clarify what is objectively verifiable as a memory, as an experience, and what may be something that they're using creative visualization for or certain subconscious symbolism for as a representation of their own issues that they need to work out. And making that distinction and still moving forward is important. So I have lucid dreams. I've been practicing lucid dreaming for a while. In my lucid dreams, I have incredible amounts of detail about whatever it is that's happening. As one example, there was one environment where I was walking through like this large darkened room, almost kind of like a Baldur's Gate 3 Underdark dungeon.
Mm-hmm.
And I started to realize that I was dreaming. And once that happens, then I start the lucid part. And part of the thing you should do as a lucid dreamer is you change tacks. If the dream is taking you in this direction, turn around and go the other direction. That way you can actually be more lucid. So I decided to fly up because above there were some kind of pillars and some other kind of platform way above me, like 30, 50 feet above me. So I decided to fly up and see what's on that platform, what's behind that pillar. And when I got up there, there was a there there. There was tons of detail there. It was so rich in detail that it's not like you can see the pixelation of your mind trying to create, the patient went out of the script and we have to now create the new world as they're approaching it. No, it was already there. So
Mm-hmm.
just because I have tons of detail in a lucid dream does not mean it was real or that I was visiting another world. It was a dream. It was a
Mm-hmm.
great creative construction of my own imagination. But that doesn't mean it was verifiably real. And that I should take from that into my waking world um, changes in my behavior or social policy, recommendations that just because I saw a certain being, that being must exist and their message must be true, and therefore I must follow it because they must be better than me. No, that's danger, danger, danger sign to me. And it's something we really need to come back to critical thinking skills and all that kind of stuff for.
I have learned this in my own remote viewing study and in the same sorts of classes and settings. But I have a level of humility and understanding that the people who came before me and discovered these real phenomena, esoteric effects, real world 3D material energetic effects, they were first because they were the most open minded. They were the most permissive, and in a lot of ways, their lack of discernment is what allowed them to stick with something long enough that seemed silly to everyone else in order to try it and learn that there was something there. However, now we need people like, I would wager us, who have enough open mindedness to be able to assimilate what they've learned, but also are developing our own skills of discernment to do this second layer of filtering. Like, how much of what you're doing works, but you don't know why? You're directionally right, and some of it you're just wrong. You're misinterpreting it, and or it's sort of like Warhammer 40K. It's like this is the level of performance before repairing the actual thing, but this actual ritual, it really doesn't matter. You don't need the candles
Yeah,
or the
you just
the
need to be in the
seance.
brain state, whatever you
Right.
do. Yeah.
That's what I want, is the underlying models of how this works. Do you have any theories, whether it's, it's G or Fachi specifically, or any of the things that you're expert in? Do you have any ideas of what some of these underlying models might be? Just sort of conjecture at this point, of course, not true knowing yet. But do you have any ideas of what is actually happening here and what the rules are?
Yeah. Um, for how I approach it, I try not to make guesses at ultimates. I don't know. But what I, rather than starting from the big picture and going down, which I think has been, it's a need that people have. I see this in new religious movements a lot. It's a need that people have to have the entire structure figured out, and then how do I fit within that? I I change the model. I say I don't know. I'm going to find out. That is on the agenda. It's on the list. Instead, I'll look at the individual phenomenon first, collect the data on it, talk to other people who do that, and then build the model up from the ground up rather than assume something from the top down. That's where I think it's a whole other subject where certain religious groups are going to have a serious hard time once eventually some other intelligent conscious being does reveal itself to humans and starts to interact with us. Their experience, their culture, their history is all going to be very different from ours. And those religions who say this is what everything is and it won't go any further because we've just decided that way, that's going to be the hardest for them to break through. So that's why I have a automatic reaction of not trying to create the ultimates, but I'm forming conclusions based on what I've learned. So, for example, I'll give you one. It's going to be part of my paper for the SSE. Um, I'm wondering why, after 2.5 years of daily meditation on my lower dantian, progressively over time, I'm having this experience, not every time, but a good amount of time if I have the conditions right, where I feel that there is like a hot water bottle in my lower abdomen, below my belly button, inside my body. And as I inhale, my the muscles around my belly expand. But then about a second later, this it feels like this hot water bottle, because it's thick, inflates. And sometimes it inflates by itself to the maximum where it feels like something's going to tear inside. Now, I've written to my teachers to say, is something going to break here? Why is this happening? Right? Now, what is that? Am I just imagining that? Absolutely not, because I can feel it. I know when it's not working and when it is working. Um, it's absolutely something mechanically is happening there. It seems to me that it's a magnetic field. How in the world can a magnetic field form inside a biological organism? Well, are there other organisms that generate magnetic fields? Yes, there are. There are other organisms that generate electricity. Electricity that moves generates magnetic fields. What is it that's in the lower belly of a human being that that could help create a magnetic field? Part of that idea that I have is that, one, you've got lower intestines there. The lower intestines are wrapped, right? They're stacked in the human body. What's inside the lower intestines? Inside the lower intestines, there's all these little villi, right, covering the whole inside surface of the lower intestines. Look at a battery. How does a battery collect a charge? Well, you've got these plates, right? And in between the plates, there's fluid. And based on the material that's there and the kind of charging that's done before, once it's created, it's able to hold on to that charge. If you look at the villi that are lined up on your lower intestines, it seems like they could act that way. Okay, so it's an idea, right? It's a hypothesis. It if I'm able to, if somehow whatever the mechanism is, that's another part. But if that is possible, that a charge is being collected and the villi are acting like a battery and they're wrapped around in that certain way, then it seems reasonable that there could be, as it moves through whatever it's happening, that a magnetic field will develop. Why I'm more confident that it's some type of magnetic field is I've now gotten to the point, and this has taken several years, of once it's gotten to this thick, water bottle gets up to a certain amount, once it seems as a transition has happened in the meditation where suddenly it now contracts on itself. So first it was just inflating, and then it got to a certain part where it was inflating full. And then as I'm getting deeper and deeper into the meditation, it gets to a certain point and it contracts. It starts squishing on itself. What is that contraction? I started to look around to try to explain what can that be, and I've hit upon the Lorentz force. So there's a really cool video of some individuals that have like a quarter, and they're able to send quite a lot of electricity through this experimental setup, and it creates this really strong magnetic field, which then contracts and causes the quarter physically to shrink. It didn't lose any of its material. It just, all the atoms within the quarter got squished together because of the Lorentz force of this magnetic field squishing in on itself because of the amount of voltage that was going through with the electricity. That's what it feels like. That's just an analogy, and that needs to be tested. So the problem is I don't want people to cut up my stomach to
Right.
test. And I've tried using a tri-field meter to be near my lower abdomen as that inflation's happening, all zeros. I recently bought had another PhD give me a suggestion to look at an electrostatic meter. So I just bought it, got it yesterday. I've done one test, and I had the electrostatic meter towards my lower abdomen, all zeros, but it did show a polarity, and the polarity was positive. So don't know what that means. I need more tests, but it's that kind of building up from the bottom up. Here's the experience. Let's try the tests and let's see if we can verify to get to a better theory so that somebody else can test it. That's my approach. That's what I'm doing.
That's fascinating. And I love this approach. This is intuitively, I was trying to do something similar, but I think you're using your background in religious studies and as well as interest in historical accounts to show you where to
And
look.
science. I
Yeah,
actually
of
had
course.
a couple degree. I played around in college. I was in
Yeah.
college too long.
Yeah. And now they just showed you where to look, and now you're okay. Now that I'm here, I'm going to do this myself from the ground up. I love that. I think you won't be entrenched in the dogma, but you can draw from it as needed for guidance on which direction to go.
Yeah, exactly.
That's cool. So if what is that meditation? Again, this is where you're up against it from the sort of Eastern philosophy side is they've seemed very cagey. They have lots of reasons, as you mentioned, for not sharing this sort of information. So you're getting resistance on both sides.
Yeah.
So what is like the sort of 101 of like what are the basic meditative steps or the sort of rough principles that somebody could go through if they wanted to do firsthand exploration, hopefully not wait 2.5 years to have any noticeable effect, but what's the sort of fast path and to just seeing I think something happened or I think I felt something. Would
Yeah.
you have any sort of advice for somebody like that?
Yeah. So I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but it is not a fast path. The reason being is we are talking about biology. It's not just a belief. It's not just in my mind. I can't just intend it and next day it happens. Um, in this Taoist internal alchemy process, you are literally changing your body over time, and your body has to be transformed in order to allow this to work. What's that transformation? The main transformation is your meridians need to be opened up to allow the energy to flow through. Most people's meridians are blocked through bad diet, bad exercise, the things that they engage in on a regular basis could be interfering with this energetic system that we were born with. There's also what's interesting. I mean, I've heard this is part of the teaching, that there is a natural kind of movement of a major movement of energy in the body up the spine, down the front. So it's the dew and the Ren channel. That's part of what's called the microcosmic orbit. The energy throughout the day naturally moves, in that way when you're a kid. Then when you reach puberty, it reverses so that on the back, the energy goes from bottom to the top, but on the front, it goes from bottom to the top. And that causes problems for cultivation. You can't cultivate energy in your lower dantian if everything's moving up. So as part of this inner alchemy process, you have to change your Ren channel to begin to flow down again so that you recover the kind of movement, natural movement you had as a child. So that takes time. You are actually having to retrain your energetic system, your organic system to be able to do that. You have to um, uh, basically cut out the crap in your diet. That's one of the first things all three teachers are pretty clear on in the groups that I'm working under, is you got to fix your diet. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean you have to be super thin or you have to be super bulk. No. What it means is your internal organs must be healthy, as healthy as they can be, because then that's tied to your meridian channel. Your meridian channel is how your energy moves. And then when your energy moves better, then your overall health. So it just takes time for that to occur. Now, can there be things that you do that convince you that there is such a thing as an energetic body? Absolutely. There's a really basic exercise that I teach that I've learned through actually a really cool book by Donald Michael Craig called Modern Magic. He has a really cool exercise that is meant for relaxation and mind body awareness that I then take, because I take from multiple sources, um, and teach that to my clients as one of the first things that I teach them. It's called the Golden Ball Relaxation Technique. It's extremely simple, but it's really powerful and very basic. What it does is it allows you to show that when your intention is placed somewhere on the body, your energy will flow there. What's this energy? For now, you can just think of it as increased blood flow to the place that you're focused on. Let's just think about it like that. And that actually is what is measured. You get increased blood flow to where you're focusing on. So very briefly, and I can write this up for you if you want to put it somewhere.
It'd be cool.
You essentially lay down and you relax yourself on the ground and close your eyes, and you imagine a golden ball, a golden sphere that's below your feet, and it's sort of just hanging out there, right? And the more you practice this, the better you get your visualization going. The one thing you need to know is that golden ball, every place that it touches on your body causes it to grow warm and tingle, and it relaxes. So what you do is you slowly, very slowly, move that golden ball over your body. And you could do multiple ways. Basically, you go from the bottom up, and you allow that ball to do what it's supposed to do. It makes your body grow warm. It makes your body get tingly. It makes your body relax. And then once you get to the top of your head, then you can allow your whole body to be suffused with a golden color. And then from that point, you're now, you've probably fallen asleep before you finished. But once you get better at it, which means, by the way, this is a great technique for people who have insomnia, but is when you're able to get through the whole process, you've now shown how you can, just through your imagination, just through your intention, your awareness, relax your body, right? And cause more blood flow to go to your body. It relaxes because you have more blood flow to your body. From that state, your mind is very awake, your body is extremely relaxed. You're actually now in trance. So you can do lots of things in that. You can focus on a certain area that may be injured and just keep the golden ball there and try to see if you can encourage your body to use its natural healing processes. You could use this as a launching pad for lucid dreaming. You could start giving yourself commands. I'm going to allow my body to fall asleep, but I'm going to repeat to myself over and over again what it is I want to accomplish in the lucid dream, right? You could use it for astral travel. Your mind is awake, your body's asleep. You can disassociate yourself from your body and then roll out and actually move around in this world as a energetic being. So there's lots of things you can use the state for, but it's very quick to learn, and it shows you that where your intention is, the chi follows, the energy follows. This is the same principle in an active way from what this meditation that I'm describing, where you're collecting the chi. There's several meditations. Each group has their own. Some groups have it pretty laid out in general on their website, like the Neichi Gong Fu School is very good at giving you the whole method in a simple summarized paragraph. It tells you exactly what they're doing in general, and then you can sign up for their classes and do the lessons. And eventually, when I'm permitted to teach the systems, I'll be able to give more details. But mainly, they're seated, they're standing, and there's moving practices. The basic practice that everybody does, which is non-proprietary, is seated meditation. You're
Hmm.
sitting with your, in some kind of a pose where your spine is erect and your body is situated so that your hips are higher than your knees. Your back is somewhat straight, so the spine can be elongated, and you just focus your mind on your lower danchan. You have to find that point where it is, and if you just keep your mind on your lower danchan, then eventually you'll start getting some kind of experiences there. And whatever experience you have, you should talk to your teacher, and they can guide you on what to do. But if you do that for it didn't take me long before I began to get the first sign, and then progressively over time I started getting more and more signs until I got to the point where I'm getting this kind of inflation. And actually, I'll give you one thing I haven't told really many people about. One of the things I'm now starting to experience is an actual electrical discharge that's
Well,
coming from my lower danchan to my perineum. So it happens randomly, but it feels like an actual discharge.
it actually doesn't sound very comfortable.
Yeah.
Ugh.
It's surprising. It throws you out of meditation. But once you get
Hmm.
used to it and you say, this is
Yes.
natural, this is just part of the process, I am opening up my energy channels, I am allowing this electricity to go through, then it becomes a normal thing. And it's,
Wow. What's so surprising, I mean, I guess it shouldn't be at this point about that, is how much it mirrors. I don't know many, philosophies, but I've read the translations and commentary on the Yoga Sutras, and this mirrors exactly what yogis are doing with the siddhis, almost exactly. It is just the
lots of
layering of,
connections.
yeah, there's underlying patterns for sure, different outcomes and purposes, but it is just repeated training of concentration, visualization, and intention, just like layering it on over and over every day. It's not any one session that makes it happen, but it just seems like you're carving ruts somewhere, somehow, sometimes in your body. I'd be shocked if epigenetics was not involved here. You're doing something. You're carving ruts over and over again that I guess if you keep doing it, eventually something very interesting starts to happen and it's not just a feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. And your term ruts I think is important. A lot of people think that the meridian channels are like tubes that are in the body, and they're looking for these tubes as if they're veins. They're not. Instead, they're actually the spaces in the folds of fascia or of your tendons and things like that. There's a practice that Taoist inner alchemists do called the Neijing Tu. Well, it's called the Jijin Jing, um, which is the sinew or tendon changing process, which allows you to activate the whole diagram that the Neijing Tu talks about. And I totally forget the book. It's a fantastic book. I'll have to find it to you, find it and send it to you. But it's a way of trying to understand how does acupuncture work, and it's looking at the whole meridian system, and it's looking at embryos. How are embryos formed? They're formed by doing a lot of folding, and when you fold something, you have creases. When you have those creases, and those creases are maintained throughout the folding process to create the being, it's the crease that is the meridian. It is a channel. It's not a tube. So, what do you have to do as a practitioner physically? Since it's not a belief, it's not just something I intend. I have to physically make that channel clearer. So I have to do physical motions thousands of times to make that channel clearer. I have to change my my structure, my physical structure. And I can attest that as I do that, there's a certain standing practice where I do that. I can feel over time now little threads of electricity shooting up from my forearms out through my fingers, and I feel pressure on my fingertips. That's a positive sign that the energy is building up and is actually starting to come out. And eventually, I should be able to express that energy out of the fingertips through the air towards somebody else. So I'm looking forward to that, and I'm just trying to practice as hard as I can until it happens.
Well, I'm going to be staying tuned, and that I think this is incredibly exciting. I had never considered, of course, there are physiological effects. You're in the 3D material world, you're going to need to make 3D material changes in order to do anything. And I think I've focused a lot perhaps on idealistic or mind or soul or spirit sort of level of this. Of course, your intention matters, what you're trying to do, having the correct approach, but ultimately you will have to carve physical changes into yourself and perhaps in other ways into the world in order to facilitate effects that are not normal or just like default. Uh, that makes sense. I had not considered it, and I just wonder where else we could. This is where I'm going to guess, pretty much happenstance art over thousands of years developed or longer. What
Possibly,
could
yeah.
we do if we
Word of
understood what was
mouth by
happening?
by student by master and down the lineages, and slowly it started developing. Yeah, it's
Mhm.
very um it's very experimental.
Could we regrow a limb? I mean, in principle, we have the materials to do it. If only your body could be directed to understand how. I don't. Who knows what the limits are? Like, if we could begin to understand where intentionality, as it relates to the body, could go.
Yeah, it's
This has been
fascinating. I
awesome,
mean,
man.
it's all open for exploration. I mean, I think it's the point. That's part of your channel too, right? Is let's not just ooh and ah about the theory. Let's explore it. Let's be open-minded scientists. In our own way, we can be citizen scientists. We don't need a degree to be a scientist. You're a human being, therefore you are a scientist. You are able to use your critical thinking skills to, compare cause and effect and all that, and start building up your knowledge base. I mean, all those home science experiments and kits that people had as kids. I think if they didn't have them, they should go through them because it opens up the whole world of human knowledge that we've been able to develop as a species. Whether or not there are other species out there, we have a body of things that we can be proud of.
It's hard to express the depth of surprise and gratitude I have for finding myself on the frontier of anything. Uh, I thought maybe space, and then oh, I guess not. And so this is an exciting opportunity for everyone involved. Um, I guess I want to ask you before we go, what do you want? What do you want from people? What do you want for yourself? How can you help them? Like, what do you selfishly want from other people that they might want too?
That's that's a good
You gotta say
question.
what you want, man. You're not gonna get it.
Yeah, that's true. I guess. That's a good one. I need to think about that one. My focus is more on. Well, here's a selfish thing that I'm really focused on right now. This is work that I actually tried to do when I first went to college. So I played around with many degrees. Like I said, I have very broad interests. I like these multidisciplinary subjects. And when I finally settled in and I wanted to do graduate studies in religious studies, and I ended up, finishing up at ASU, and I went to a couple other places, um, bright-eyed and eager graduate student, I was hit, with the brick wall of, um, you want to study what? New religious movements? You want to look at the neo-pagan movement? You want to look at phenomenology as a research methodology? No, not here. You'll never be a graduate student here.
Wow.
That really threw me for a loop. And so I guess in a way, what I'm doing, because of the fads keep coming back, right? We're now in the stage where a lot of these subjects are being talked about. I have the opportunity to get the doctorate with a program that is open-minded enough to be able to do it, and then I can pursue my research, with that somewhat a bit of a stamp of authority, or at least get my publications out and let my work speak for itself. So selfishly, I'm trying to catch up for the time that I would have spent doing this research and that I've been doing on my own, but I want to put it out there publication wise. And I'd like to talk to more people who are in this, who are doing similar things, and let's compare notes. Let's get more research out there, and let's just publish more, and then see how far we go. So that's my one big selfish thing right now, is getting my work out there and talking to more people.
Cool. We can make that happen. Awesome. Jeff has websites, as he's mentioned. He does hypnotherapy, and it sounds like possibly other services. So get in contact with Jeff, and I think we'll wrap there. Anything else you wanted to mention that we didn't cover?
One thing is looking
Please.
forward to the Psy Games.
Oh
So
yeah.
Psy Games are coming out in August. We're at the end of the pre-testing phase.
Yeah.
I'm,
How'd you do?
egotistical enough to say that I'm in the top 10 of all 5 categories. So I'm
Whoa!
looking forward to testing,
That's
and
cool,
and
man.
to going in front of the panels and to get all the scientists that are studying this. And I'd like to see this continue as a yearly thing.
Are they going to air it on TV? They should put it on like
Yeah.
ESPN4 or something, right? Are they?
I think that's their plan. They want to make this like a standard positive culture thing for adults and children. That the fact that it is that we all have psi, and we can have friendly competition with it.
Entertainment has been one place that these sort of ideas have been able to permeate because they don't. If it's interesting, it'll sell, and so they don't care. And I think another good place is going to be profit motive. Profit motive. They don't care if you can. If you can give me something useful that I can turn a profit on, I'm interested. So cool, man. We'll watch the side games. That's cool. I thought about applying, but I just I don't think I'm there yet, to be honest with you. But
Yeah,
I'll cheer for
just
you, man.
apply next year. Just try anyway.
Okay. Yeah. All right. We'll do. All right. We'll wrap here.
All right, thank you, Stephen.